Hi, I'm Nabil Doss, expert in influential communication. On this episode of Dov Barron's Leadership and Loyalty Show, I'll share with you the Trader Code. So stay tuned.
Congratulations! You are tuned into Dov Barron's Leadership and Loyalty Show, the #1 podcast for Fortune 500 executives and those who are dedicated to creating a quantum leap in leadership. Your host, Dov Barron, is the founder of FullMontyLeadership.com. He's an executive mentor to leaders like you, a contributing writer for Entrepreneur Magazine, CEO World, and he's been featured on CNN, Fox, CBS, and many other notable sites. Dov Barron is an international business speaker who was named by Inc. magazine as one of the top 100 leadership speakers to hire. Now, over to Dov Barron.
Welcome, dear friends, fans, and fellow aficionados of leadership excellence. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Dov Barron's Leadership and Loyalty Tips for Executives, part of the Full Monty interview series, where today we're going to look at, when it comes to creating a compelling message, why you should give your 15 bullet point PowerPoint the bullet and get rid of it. If you're a new listener, new viewer to the show, thank you for joining us. Strap yourself in. We're about to go full Monty. If you're a regular, a big thank you to you for making us the #1 podcast globally for Fortune 500 listeners. And with our over 2 million downloads and plays, we are honored and grateful to be cited by Inc.com as the #1 podcast to make you a better leader. Thank you for sharing the show with everybody you know. Listen, there are over 1 million podcasts out there, thousands of them focused on leadership and business, but there's only one show that focuses on what is at the heart and the soul of business and leadership. And you are tuned into that with me, your host, Dov Barron. So remember, we always need your help in staying relevant, so please get yourself over to iTunes, rate, review, and subscribe to the show. All right, let's strip it down and dive right in. As a leader, whether you are a CEO, someone in the C-suite, a sales leader, an entrepreneur, a leader in any capacity, you know the world of leadership is not static any longer. 30 years ago, you became the CEO of the company, and that meant that you'd found your position and you were likely going to stay there in tenure until they gave you that golden handshake and you walked away. Today, you better stand out from the crowd. You better stand out in a way like a blockbuster movie would stand out from the independent little movies. If you want to be an effective leader, you have got to be a master communicator. You have got to communicate in a way that not only is contemporary, but is effective, but also in a way that will grab attention and deeply want them leaving more. Well, if you want to know how to do that, I got a real treat for you today, because our guest today is Nabil Doss. And Nabil Doss he's the founder of Unlocking the Trader Code. How to effectively extract, capture, and deliver the essence of your message. Nabil Doss, I apologize, Nabil. Nabil Doss is an expert in influential communication, known as the French voice of Paramount Pictures Canada. You know when you watch the movies and you hear, in a world where, just like you did at the beginning, well, that in French is Nabil. He's the man. He's a seasoned speaker and expert in influential communication. He's voiced and directed and produced hundreds of Hollywood blockbuster trailers. As a speaker and expert in delivery skills, he helps business executives, professional speakers, unleash their true potential to communicate a deeper level and craft and deliver a highly inspirational message to your audience. Nabil Doss delivers keynotes and workshops on influential communication, and he does so in 5 continents, and he does those presentations in 2 languages. Yes, I can speak 3. English, a little bit of Yiddish, and mostly rubbish, but he does it in 2 fluently. Please welcome Nabil Doss.
Thank you.
The crowd goes wild. Good to have you, my friend.
Good to be on the show, Dov. Thank you for this eloquent introduction. Really.
Well, I doubt that it was that, but nonetheless, I'm happy that you're here. Especially, I doubt in the face of yourself, sir. I tip my full I mean, you've done amazing things. You speak all over the world. As I said, you speak in both French and English, and you're the voice of Paramount. That's pretty amazing. But that's not where you started, though. I mean, you started out in the advertising world. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is correct. I started with a small advertising agency, like a creative boutique, that I founded with a partner. And 3 years in, we had a phone call from one of our media partners, and they said Paramount Pictures was looking for a creative shop in Canada to adapt all of their advertising and promotional material. So we modestly started. Chemistry was excellent. Modestly started adapting some collateral, posters, radio spots, and eventually trailers and TV spots. And that goes back quite a few years. I believe it was in 88 or 89, somewhere.
So moving towards 20 years.
Oh, yes. And the first movie I was involved in was Beverly Hills Cop 2.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So you did the Beverly Hills Cop 2 trailer in French.
Right. Not the trailer. I believe at the time that was the first movie I worked on. So I believe we produced a radio spot and did some adaptation for the posters. And then eventually the relationship grew into doing more, and I never looked back.
But you found yourself you were an executive, this was your company, but you found yourself as the voice guy for these things kind of by accident, right? Tell us a little bit about that.
Oh, absolutely. One day, well, I rewind a little bit.
Sure.
I used to direct direct talent in studio. Yes. Telling them this is what I want, this is what I'm looking for, because essentially I was scripting and producing. So as a director, I knew exactly what I was looking for. Mm-hmm. So I would hire talent to do voice work.
Right.
And that was going on for a few years until one day we were about to record and the talent did not show up. So at the last minute, he called in sick and said, I can't make it. So I was stuck. What did I do? I stepped into the booth and did my narration for the first time officially. Now, what you have to know is that I was sort of prepared because I've always did some voice work and presentations, even going as far back as in elementary school. I was always the guy who would read the stories.
Oh, really?
Then eventually in high school and further, when we had parties, I was the guy who was going to do the roast.
Really?
emceeing events, etc. So I was kind of ready for this.
Yeah.
So I stepped into the booth, recorded narration, and sent it off. At the time, this particular promo piece was not airing, meaning that it didn't have to go through the syndicate. So
Right.
I was fine.
Mm-hmm.
And so I sent it to Air Canada. It was playing on
Really?
airplanes. Sent it off to Air Canada, sent off a copy to Paramount, a VHS copy. That tells you it goes back quite a few.
A little while ago.
VHS copy. And I gave him a call the next day, said, okay, we met the deadline, but I've got to tell you, my voice is on the recording, and if you're not 100% satisfied with it, I'll do it again at no charge. Don't worry about it.
Right.
So they said, oh, you don't worry about it. It's fine. And it stayed at that. And then a few months down the road, I met with the vice president at the time, who was down here in Montreal, and he said, well, we love your voice, and we would love to have your voice as our French voice, so that people would relate to the voice and kind of equate the Paramount Pictures voice with one person.
Yes.
So I was thrilled.
I'm sure.
I got syndicated, so I could actually speak on radio and television. And here again, never looked back. And it put me on a journey where the voice was kind of at the heart of many things, because I believe everything starts with our inner voice.
Yes.
And it's one thing to have a strong, booming narrator's voice or presenter's voice or radio announcer voice, and quite another when you say having a voice that comes from the inside, the voice within.
Absolutely.
And I believe is that when the two are truly aligned, when you speak to your values, when you speak to your vision, when you speak to your DNA,
yes,
you speak truth, and then the voice then takes such a it amplifies, it becomes powerful, it becomes resonant.
Absolutely. I think that the thing around voice is that people don't actually realize how clear it is to the other person when you're not aligned. So you can, I give you a great example. It happened many times, but I can think of a particular time where somebody took some of my intellectual property, some of my own material, and started to teach it, as it was theirs. And I, of course, was upset and pissed off about this. I was speaking to a mentor of mine, and he goes, "So what?" And I said, "What do you mean, so what? I slogged, I've worked out, I've spent years crafting this stuff." And he said, "So what?" He goes, "Anyone who's ever heard you speak and hears that other person say the same words will know it's not their message, because it resonates clearly. There's such depth of truth in the words, but not the words themselves in what you put into it." And it's exactly what you're saying there, that I think that so many people miss. They rehearse and they rehearse and they rehearse, but they don't feel the truth of it. And when they don't feel the truth of it, people read that. I would rather listen to an amateur speaker who is totally connected to what it is they're saying than a highly polished speaker any day of the week. And I'm a professional speaker. And, it's that, as you said, that alignment of the inner and outer voices is powerful.
It is so powerful. And speaking of the professional speaking circuit, we hear a lot of horror stories where intellectual property is being borrowed, quote unquote.
How very PC of you.
Yeah, exactly. And you can't be the original. When you borrow stuff,
Mm-hmm.
you're just a clone.
Yes.
And we all know that clones don't last. They don't make a difference. You look at anything that is original, whether it's a painting, it's in technology, in art, in anything. The original still holds a lot of value. And as you said, it doesn't really need to be polished. You can polish it.
Mm-hmm.
You can polish it if you want it to be polished. If you want it rough, leave it rough. But
Yes.
be yourself. Be yourself.
But let's just go to that for a moment, because we're talking about here about conveying one's message and being oneself. But I'm cautious of that advice, not from you, but even from myself, because when people are inauthentic, quote unquote, not themselves, 99% of the time, those people don't know that's not being themselves. So they will say, "Well, I'm being authentic."
Mm-hmm.
They don't have that way of recognizing, actually, this is not your true voice, or you are not being authentic, or you're not, you're not being yourself. So it becomes somewhat trite to say to somebody, "Be yourself." Well, who else am I going to be? Because they don't have that awareness. Because I know you guide speakers and you guide executives in finding their voice. Do you find that you bump into that? And if you do, how do you get somebody to connect to what might be more authentic?
It's quite an interesting and very deep question, Dov. I would try to answer on two different levels.
Mm-hmm.
The first level is about consciousness. You talked about, how conscious are we about being ourselves or not? That's the only thing we know, and we don't know better. And I believe that we do feel when we are in resonance with whom we are, who we are, and when we're not. But sometimes we tell ourselves stories because we're lazy, because we don't want to go the extra mile, and but it shows. And I believe that people know, but they don't want to show that they know. So
Hmm.
they put on a whole masquerade. On the other level is sometimes the signal is there, but it's very faint.
Right.
So I position myself when I work with leaders. And by the way, when we speak about the voice, it's not. I'm not a voice. A speech coach
No.
in terms of the technical aspect. I can help. I can certainly help in developing the voice, but not a speech therapist.
Yes, I understand.
So we speak about the voice metaphorically.
Hmm.
So my goal is to be a signal amplifier, listening, listening to where the gem is, where that little piece will become huge if you give it enough space, if you connect it to that, if you strike the right chord, and then
Hmm.
you get resonance. So my role is really to amplify that signal, and sometimes it's just amazing. You know, you were reading your trader, the trader script, and I have it with me here, and some words have a special meaning.
Hmm.
And I heard you. The reason I told you did very well is because when you said magnify engagement, you had you had a visual in your mind. What is
Yes.
magnification? What
Hmm.
is engagement to you? It has to mean something. It has to be connected to a value. If
Right.
it's not, then it becomes like a political speech where it's hollow. We usually don't believe, we don't buy into it. But when you see it, when you feel it, and when it's connected to your truth, to your story, to your values, then I may be aligned with what you're saying or not, but I will respect you because you spoke your truth.
Yeah. It's fascinating how I mean, it's one of the reasons I really love watching great actors. Great character actors because I did spend some time in that world many, many, many hundreds of years ago. Uh, but when an actor embodies, I mean, you really get that actor feels that role. So they say those words with such deep meaning and conviction. And, and that's what I think makes a powerful performance of anybody is do you feel into it?
Absolutely. Uh, Interestingly, yesterday I came across a best of a compilation of what's his name, the the actor who committed suicide
Robin Williams?
recently, Robin Williams, exactly, and in Dead Poets Society, in Patch Adams,
Yeah.
and many more movies. There were excerpts of speeches that he gave in those movies,
Yes.
and it was always Robin Williams in different characters,
Of
but it
course.
came from his soul,
Yes.
and that's why he wasn't being someone else. He was just borrowing the outside shell of a character, but his soul, his truth was just shining through, which made it so powerful, so memorable, and still resonates to this day with all of us.
Yeah. It's amazing. I mean, so let's really take this now, take it to the point, which is let's get let's address this to leaders specifically because I'm the CEO, the CFO, the CMO, the CIO, the COO, whatever it is of the company. And sure, I have to give little presentations to my team and maybe even to the executive team. But I go, it doesn't really matter. I don't really need to do this. I mean, I'm reading off the screen, the bullet points. I don't really have to be, get connected. I mean, I'm just delivering information. I'm showing, the profit margins or the lack thereof. What would you say to that person?
I would say to that person that nowadays, in today's world, we can't afford to dump data anymore because information is readily available. There are millions of pages of information on the web. People have access to all kinds of information. What they need is an analysis, is a standpoint, is a personal perspective, is sharing a vision. And in my mind, it is quite clear that every single presentation we give has to be entertaining, has to be informative, and has to be inspiring if we want to influence our people, our colleagues, our suppliers, our clients, our supporters, any way you look at it, because people are craving for the truth.
Mm-hmm.
They want to know, what is it connected to? What is the idea?
Meaning?
The meaning,
Mm-hmm.
especially millennials, the younger generations, they want to be connected to the source. Otherwise, they don't bother.
No.
They don't bother. So this is my message to business leaders and thought leaders as well, is simply every time you have the privilege of the platform, the privilege of sharing your ideas, your projects, your vision, you need to be entertaining. I say you have to be as entertaining as an Oscars evening, without the mess up that happened last year with with the envelopes for best movies. So as entertaining as an Oscars evening, as powerful and informative as a BBC documentary,
Yes.
and as inspiring as a speech from Gandhi.
And in fairness, I mean, Nabil, that is a large order, even for people like you and I who are bloody speakers, right? So the average, C-suite individual or even entrepreneur or thought leader is going, I'm not an entertainer, let alone, all the other, there's three categories, and even entertainer at the first one, they go, I'm out. I can't tell jokes. I can't do a little dance, juggle,
Exactly.
Get down tonight.
Right. And you don't have to be an entertainer, but you can entertain. And we've got plenty of possibilities that are available to us. We can find videos. We have access to music. We can share some thoughts from authors. We can. There's plenty of elements that are readily available. It's just a matter of picking the right elements that fit your subject matter and also are aligned with your personality. So you're not an entertainer, okay, but you can certainly take improv classes. You can sharpen your skills by working with a speech coach.
Yes.
And this is so hugely important that sometimes the message is secondary to the way it is presented, is delivered. So yes, entertaining, informative. Well, we have to check our facts. Yes. We have to
unless
make
we're the
sure.
President.
Exactly.
But we'll leave that one alone for now.
Yes. Well, actually, a colleague of mine, Dr. John Molidor, who is a neuropsychologist, and he happens to be the president of the National Speakers Association in the USA. His thing is check your facts, because when he's presenting to his students at the medical faculty, he's saying that they're fact checking him
as
on the spot, because it's constantly evolving.
Yes.
So we need to check our facts. And the third thing, how can we be as inspiring as Gandhi, as Mandela, as JFK, whomever. Well, number one goes back to what we said in the beginning. It all has to start with your inner voice. If you're connected, if you speak the truth, if you share your story, if you share your hero's journey, how you've struggled and how you've overcome the obstacles, then you're hugely human.
Yes.
Because communication is a matter of when you communicate as a leader, it's a balancing act. It's like walking on a tightrope where on one hand you have authority because you're the president, because
Sure.
you're the boss.
Yep.
You have authority, so people look up to you. And on the other hand, you have to be vulnerable.
Yep.
You have to be a human being. Otherwise, people do not connect with what you're saying. And it is a balancing act because if you're too human, then you come across as a wimp.
Yeah.
If you're too authoritative or authoritarian,
yeah.
then you become inaccessible, and people can't connect to what you're saying. It becomes your vision, and it's not shared. It doesn't resonate. And this is why, in my mind, today's leaders have to be filmmakers. Take that movie that is playing on their mind screen and be able to project it on their team's mind screen so that everybody wants to be part of it.
Now, one of the things that in this Authentic Speaker Academy for Leadership, one of my companies, one of the things we talk about is if you want them to hear it, you have to feel it. But your job, so you've got to feel it first, but your job is to create a movie in that person's head that is your story. And once they're engaged with that, they then create a split screen where they begin to run their own movie that aligns with yours. Because as a leader, our job is to not just be the authority, but to also show people that we know where they've been because we've been there. There's the vulnerability. And to show them that they can get to where we are. And if we don't do that, if we're just like all pomp and circumstance and we're fluffing our chest, then, as you said, totally inaccessible. Yeah, you're great, but I'm not really connected to you, and I don't really know. It's too much. I can't do that. It's not for me. And if on the other hand, it's I call it emotional vomit without discernment. You're just puking out this,
Exactly.
You've got to have that balance. And it is something that I think that most leaders need assistance with because we've all been educated to think that being vulnerable is weak. And vulnerability without action can certainly come across that way. But if you're talking about the vulnerability of where you've been, and even to say, here's where I still am challenged, but here's what I've done and here's what I'm doing. This can be incredibly inspirational because you brought it up, which is the hero's journey. And, I've spoken a lot about that in this show. I'm a big fan of Campbell's work and have written a model for how to present based on the hero's journey. And it's called the Full Monty Story, how to deliver that story. That understanding of where we struggle is universal. Do you, because you've done these trailers for things from the Transformers movies to, all kinds of crazy movies.
To Titanic.
Titanic, right?
Yes.
So which is not exactly got a happy ending. So, in a world where your ship goes down and you're clinging to a piece of wood, one woman holds a jewel. But
one band will play it till the very end.
Exactly, as the boat slides down. So, in doing that, do you feel like? Because I know you've got a formula. I want to share that with people. Want to open it up for people to see that. But you have this formula, which is the 5 steps to unlocking your trailer code. But do you feel like when you do those trailers and you do those voiceovers and you direct them, and even do your own, do you feel like they are a 90-second, 30-second, whatever it might be, hero's journey summarized?
Oh, absolutely.
Because after we spoke, I went, oh my God, that's exactly what it is.
Exactly. And the thing is, we'll share the formula for our audience in a few moments. But the formula sets up the plot so that in the beginning you're in the midst of chaos,
Yes.
and then the hero is going to come and resolve the issue. And the more chaotic the situation is, the more heroic the main character will become. Now, of course, it's not always a Terminator movie or Transformers. Sometimes it's just a plain love story.
Mm-hmm.
But there's still a hero somewhere, and this is where the transfer phenomenon happens, where people, when they're watching a trailer, they feel connected to the character and they want to see the whole movie. And there's something magic about trailers, and this is what I call the trailer code.
Yes.
And essentially, it's the fact that a trailer represents only 1% of a movie.
Yes. I mean,
1%.
Think of that, right? If you got 90 seconds and it's a 90-minute movie, that's 1%. You got to grab people.
Exactly.
It's amazing.
So that 1% has to actually be the DNA of the movie. And the parallel I draw from trailers to our content as thought leaders, as business leaders, community leaders, is simply that the message we think we have is way too much for what needs to be delivered. Mm-hmm. So in my mind, we suffer from the expert syndrome, where we know too much, right, and we don't know how to clean this up and pare it down to the 1%.
Right.
So in my mind, over 99% of our content, of our knowledge, our expertise is totally irrelevant to our audiences, to our teams. What's relevant is that less than 1%, which is essentially like the human DNA. Mm-hmm. 99% of it, give or take a few points, is similar. Yes. But then less than 1% makes you Dov and makes me Nabil, and et cetera, et cetera. Right. So this is what sets a message apart. And in order to get to that 1%, you have to remove the unnecessary layers, get to that DNA, and make sure that you use plenty of metaphors, of stories, of images, and the sound, of course. So it's really a way of thinking and presenting in a holographic way, where you're getting the whole picture, 360 degrees.
You know, it's really interesting because I started thinking a lot about it after you shared it with me, and I thought, it's certainly, you know, you nailed it, because it's certainly a challenge that I have, is that I've been doing what I've been doing for 34 years. I've been studying since I was a kid in my area, and the wanting to turn the fire hose on when people want just a little sip is so tempting.
Well said.
Right?
It is tempting.
It's so tempting because it's all relevant to me.
Exactly. And it's tempting not because you want to show off.
No.
Because it comes from a place of generosity, a place of, well, I'll share what I know.
Exactly.
But I don't have 34 years to listen to what you've done.
Right.
I'll be way too old, maybe dead by then.
Well, the interesting thing about it, though, is that what I love about what you're sharing with people is, in a world where social media exists, and, you know, we've got Google, everybody wants it now. You know, everybody wants everything now. You know, I mean, the example is, you know, when I would go out and when I started speaking in the 80s, I would go out and do a 2-hour presentation as 2, maybe 3 hours as an opening event. Now people want a TED Talk. It's 20 minutes. Now, I get that there's some problems with TED Talks. I'm not saying any different, and people have made those comments. But it's a statement of how people want it speeded. And now there's a whole new category that are 9 minutes long. So TED's now been cut in half, and it's 9 minutes long. And I can see that we are headed towards your trailer code. Here's my presentation. It's 90 seconds. That's all you get, and you're done.
Exactly. Every once in a while, I get to sit on a panel to judge, to coach people who are presenting,
Mhm.
and they're terrified because they only have 5 or 7 minutes to present the best of their
Yes.
material. And what I say to them is 5 to 7 minutes for me is an eternity, because a trailer has to last a minute and a half, under 2 minutes.
Yeah.
A television spot is 30 seconds or sometimes 15 seconds.
Yes.
And you can say a lot, but you have to build it, you have to construct it, you have to create it with that in mind. You can't just take a piece of content and talk about it for 8 minutes, 9 minutes, or 20 minutes. It won't cut it. You have to structure it well. And this is why that framework of In a World works so well, because you can say the most complicated, the most sophisticated story in 5 lines in a few seconds, or you can build on it by giving more examples and creating a full feature from that trailer.
Yeah, I thought, that's what I said. I thought it was really interesting because it's, as you said, it's that 1% the DNA. And I actually went over it with a presentation that I'd done and went, let me see. And I just went through it and I realized that I'd hit all the points. It was obviously a long presentation, but I'd hit all the points, but for the first time ever, 30 odd years, for the first time ever, I had a better sense of editing. That for me was phenomenal. I had a better sense of that, getting out of my own way and going, well, this is important. Yeah, this is important too, but so is that. But coming back to that model that you laid out allowed me to go, you know what? This is important, but it's extra. And as the generous person that I am, as the person who wants to serve, I always want to give the extra. But if the extra creates confusion, if the extra makes them go off on a tangent, then I've actually lost my point. And I think it's a brilliant, simple model that I personally believe, Nabil, when we spoke about it, I went, oh my God, this is very relevant today, but it's going to be way more relevant in a year, in 2 years, in 5 years. And I think every leader needs to grasp this, including
Absolutely.
me. I need to get it even better.
All of us, because things are evolving, things are accelerating at warp speed. And as the Borg said in Star Trek, resistance is futile. And we can't resist that. Now, going back to that framework, the scripting formula, I see it as the natives. The natives have that dream catcher.
Yes.
Right. It is supposedly, you hang it in your car, you hang it in your home, your teepee, and it just captures your dream. Mm-hmm. Well, that structure captures the essence of your message. And what I find truly amazing is that in my keynote, I give my participants 5 minutes, 5 minutes to script in 5 lines their story. And I have to say, people are usually skeptical.
Of course.
But the gems that come out of this exercise are just mind-boggling. And not only here in North America, I've tested it on 5 continents.
That's phenomenal.
And the results are the same. It's simply that, when we're looking at a blank page, we have the blank page syndrome.
Yes.
And we have so much going on. Where do we begin? How do we start? And what is the sequence? So once you have that framework, it just pulls the words, and then you can refine it. You can find the right words, the operative words, and then eventually, when you deliver it, then you can emphasize the emotional component.
Yeah. So, can we dive in?
We can
would you
dive
be
in.
willing to share your amazing formula for unlocking the trailer code with our audience? Because by the way, if you're watching, listening right now, and you don't have a pen or paper, or you don't have something to take notes on, grab it now. This is phenomenal. And as you hear it, you will recognize it because you've heard it in every movie trailer you've ever seen. It's powerful. Take it away, my friend.
It all starts with in a world. So, in a world, in a place, in a time, you have to describe the context. You have to describe the struggle. You have to describe the opportunity. But it's usually more powerful when you describe the struggle. You depict chaos, total chaos. So you see, in your case, Dov, in a world where engagement and retention are in a state of crisis. Okay, the word crisis is important.
Mm-hmm.
So you have engagement and retention. This is basic information. You need to have some information so people know what you're talking about.
Right.
So that your clients, your potential clients, when they hear you, when they read that script, they know you're talking to them. And then you describe the situation, a state of crisis.
Mm-hmm.
Now, they'll figure out what the state of crisis is. It may be different in different businesses. However, the problem is still about engagement and retention.
Yes.
So we start with in a world.
Yes.
Second line is we say one man, one woman, one person, one program, one project. We need to establish who the protagonist or the protagonists are. Who is the team? So in your case, it's Dov Baron. You have to describe who Dov Baron is. Dov Baron is a world-renowned leadership speaker and consultant. Okay, so, all right. So he knows a little bit about engagement and retention. He's been doing that for 34 years. So this is a piece where you have to clearly explain who you are or what your project is or who your team is so that people know who are the flesh and bones of this proposal in this story. So it's about depicting the character, the vibrancy in the souls.
Right.
So in a world, one person, one man, one woman.
Yes.
So the next one is, if the verb is the action, will or is. In your case, you've used is, present tense.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the action that you'll be you'll be doing to alleviate the problem, to resolve the situation.
Right.
So in your case, is guiding leaders and organizations. You're talking directly to your potential clients to find the essence of their business and the soul of their leadership. So this is really your battle. This is your battle. This is what you are doing. This is what you are proposing. This is what you are offering. Essentially, it is your offering.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next step is to what? To become magnetically attractive to top talent. This is where, after the action that you've done, you're resolving the situation. This is the result. But the results is this is very down to earth. You see, become magnetically attractive to top talent. It says what it has to do. Now, you've used magnetically, which is a great qualifier. It's not a qualifier we use every day, so we need to step away from the words like awesome and great and whatever, and use words like this: magnetically attractive to top talent. And finally, and the last word is and. So this is where we allude to the higher purpose, the reason, the why. And most of the time in a sales pitch, in a presentation, we forget about this pivotal piece, this critical element that really closes the sale, that creates that call to action. So the last piece here, in your case, you said, and magnify engagement, profit, and positive impact like never before. So magnify engagement, that's I mean, it may be like pie in the sky, but then again, you've explained who you are. You've
Hmm.
explained what you can do, and you've explained what problem you can resolve. Then this becomes the not the sequel, but the
Yes.
outcome of what you're going to do. So just to recap, we have in a world, one, will, two, and. So the idea is not to turn every business leader, every thought leader into a movie trader script or producer or director. But if if you keep in mind the fact that when you communicate, you have to be like a movie director because you're taking that movie that's playing in your brain, in your mind, and projecting it to people. Then you are, in
Yes.
fact, you become a director.
Yes.
And how do you direct? It is by explaining exactly what you have in mind, so you can use it for a pitch. You can use it for an elevator pitch or speech. You can actually base your entire speech on it. You just build on. In a world where, and then you go on and give examples. Example
Yes.
number one, example number two, number three. You can go on forever. But if you can synthesize it down to a few lines, like you have done it, then you're good to go because you can build on it for hours and you still have that 15-second powerful piece.
Yeah, it's so powerful, and I just, again want to have everybody go through it. And again, I hope that you did take notes on it. But like, in a world, there you're giving the context. This is the context that you're talking to. So, well, that's not my world. Well, I'm not talking to your world. I'm talking to this context. In a world where people are going to court over who can bake cakes for who, that's not the world I'm talking to. So that's not. So the nice thing about the context, what I like about it, is it says this is very clearly what I'm talking about, so you know it. Okay, great. One man, one team, one woman, one project is saying, here's our point of differentiation. Here's why this is why it's us. And I love that. Then there's the action. And it's this point that, I mean, I know for years, at that point where I didn't put in the action, I put in pontification. I put in why I'm wonderful and why our ideas are better than anybody else's. But really, the audience doesn't give a flying
Wazoo.
poop, right? They don't care. What they care about is the action that's going to take. So what is it you're offering as a solution to that chaos in the first step? Loved that. And then 2, which is step number 4, which is the result. Keep it simple. Here's what it is you're going to get out of it. And then you go, okay, yeah, I want that. And then I like the finish, which is going to the why. Here's
How would
why.
you feel
Yeah,
once the problem is resolved?
yeah.
So your business, to make your business soar, to have more time to devote to your family, you have to reach out to the to the higher purpose, to the universal element that will truly connect you as a human being, because it shows that you understand and you care for your customer, you care for your team, you care for your people.
Yeah, and I think that the interesting thing about this point is that and I want to know your input on this, because when I got to that part, I went, here's the struggle. It's about the why. Is that about my why or their why? And what I've just gotten from you, even clearer, is it's about their why it matters to them. My why does matter, and I should be conveying that early on I think it's in the second point. I should be conveying
Exactly.
my why, but I got to finish on your why, because you're the person I'm serving. And so if I finish with my why, well, here's why this matters to me. Who gives a crap? It's not changing my life.
Exactly.
But if the customer's why is to, as you said, to get to spend more time with your children or your grandchildren, or so that you can create a great legacy. Oh, okay, yeah, that is. So I love the formula. I hope that people will took the notes on how to do it, and I also love, as we talked about in our previous conversation, how it's so expensive, because it's 5 lines. It's somewhere between 15 and 30 seconds. I think mine is like 22 seconds or so, or 27 seconds. But it could, I've built a lot of workshops over the years that were 5 days long, 16 hours a day, intense things. But you know what? I could follow this formula and go, okay, day 1. What's day 1? Let's do the context. Or the first hour, let's do the context. The second hour, what are we going to do? The one man, the one team, the one woman. Or day 2. It's
You're so right.
so
And
simple
actually,
and so powerful.
it is powerful because it is structured. It is structured, and it leads to it naturally leads to to unleash the essence of the message you have to communicate. One thing that remember earlier in the show, I mentioned how every time we communicate, we have to be entertaining, we have to be
Yes.
informative, and we have to be inspiring. So bear in mind that in your script, you have to be entertaining. How are you entertaining? It's simply by creating some suspense where people don't necessarily know where you're going with this. Using sometimes people use rhymes, poetry. They use metaphors. They unleash your creativity there. So this is the entertaining piece. The informative piece means that you have to be specific. Otherwise, the person who will hear you will say, "Well, that's nice, but what are you doing exactly?"
Exactly. Yeah, you got
You,
it.
you, right? And just as a movie trailer needs to clearly depict the picture that people will see at the movies, and not send the wrong signal, well, you have to be very specific there. And finally, inspire by connecting to that higher purpose.
Yeah. But one of the things you were saying there about the entertaining, I think is interesting, because one of the things we teach in the Authentic Speaker Academy for Leadership is tension is your friend. And
Yeah,
as a speaker, particularly a new speaker, you feel like, oh my God, I've created tension. And you try to speak through it. It's like being in a conflict with somebody, and it's like it can't bear the silence. But you actually need that tension piece. That's part of the entertainment. And after our original conversation, I got to tell you, I was watching trailers quite differently, and it was lovely. It was wonderful, because one of the things I noticed was something I've taught for years, which was tension. That even in this short trailer, there's a piece in all of those trailers that's like 1 to 2 seconds where nothing is said, where the image is kind of blurred and it's very quiet, and then there's a boom, it's like, oh my God, and then it becomes, you've broken that tension in such a way that I'm compelled forward, and the tension build up and the tension break is the entertainment. It immediately pulls me in, and I was like, damn, this man knows his stuff, because that's exactly what they do. Brilliant.
yeah, it is brilliant. And actually, you're pointing me in a very interesting direction, because that tension is really created in your brain, in your subconscious, in your unconscious, because the brain actually plays tricks on us. It fills in the gaps.
It does.
It's like our sight.
Yeah.
We think we see on a continuous basis, but it's like a movie with some frames,
Yeah.
and then we're missing some information. Then the brain just fills in the gaps and completely understands reality. Same thing with the brain when it comes to understanding stories. How come a 15-minute television commercial for a movie gives you just enough information so in your mind the whole movie unravels? You understand what the story may or may not be. And just the same as that tension point, it's just a moment of silence, a moment of build-up where you are actually anticipating what is going to happen. And as we all know, when we anticipate, we exaggerate.
Exactly.
Fear comes from anticipation and the exaggeration.
That's a very good point. That's a great point. We are almost out of time. It's been amazing. I actually want to keep going, but I want to get into a little bit of you. My work, as you know, is all about finding the sole purpose of a leader and the sole purpose of an organization and bringing those things together, because it magnifies profits, it magnifies engagement, it does those things. But what is it for you? What is it that you found is your purpose? You and I talked about this last time. What do you find is your purpose that you're taking to what it is that you do, whether it's teaching, whether it's speaking, or whether it's doing inside of your own organization?
Believe it or not, I only realized it about a year and a half, almost 2 years ago, when I stumbled across one word as I was writing holiday wishes. And I wished my friends it wasn't unleash at the time. What was the word I used? To express the extraordinary. The extraordinary. And then that word, the extraordinary, had such resonance because I understood what my personal quest was, what my purpose in life is. I've studied arts. I'm more of an artist than a business person. However, I've been in business for almost 32 years now and worked with business leaders as well. So I have a fair understanding of it. But I'm still thinking as an artist, the creative side of my brain. And that creative side compels me to find the extraordinary and express it, whether through painting, drawing, photography, writing, speaking, putting together a speech, presenting as an MC on a stage, entertaining. It's always connected to the extraordinary. And on a personal basis, I always look for the extraordinary in people so that I can express it.
Yes.
And be proud of my world, my environment. So all this to say that with that word, I realized that this is what was the gift I can bring to organizations, to thought leaders, to business leaders, so that they discover some tools, some approaches to unleash the extraordinary in them, because once you've nailed it, once you've established what your extraordinary is, which could be your DNA, could be your talent, your talents, could be your gift, but it's highly personal, and you find the words, you find the ways, you find the channel to express it. Then you give permission to people around you in your organization, on your team, to become in turn extraordinary. And this is where my role of being a signal amplifier kicks in, where I listen and I find that nugget, I find that gem, and we build it together. Because a trailer essentially needs three elements, three ingredients. You have to simplify it.
Yes.
Down to the core, down to the bone. You have to amplify. Yes. Amplify, and this is where the amplification process is taking the elements that you have and looking at them so they become extraordinary. It's almost like taking the white light that surrounds us and putting it through a prism. Yes. What happens? You have an incredible, amazing rainbow that springs out of it. So we are essentially that prism. So number one, you simplify. Number two, you amplify. And number three, you tell a story. Yes. So you have to tell your story.
It's fabulous, mate. It's fabulous. One of the things I'm always encouraging leaders to do is to take a look at yourself and decide, where do you need to grow? Where does your business need to grow? And I know that many of our listeners, viewers are very successful already, but I challenge everybody, because I do believe that nobody is ever there. And I would be asking you to be willing to share with us what is a problem or a challenge that you're currently facing in your own business, your own process as you move forward?
Well, of course, as a speaker, traveling a lot, it can prove as being a challenge at times. But I would say on a more managerial level, it's the question is, how much do I delegate, and what should I delegate? Because I think it's hugely important to pinpoint and decide what you can do as a person that nobody else can do like you do, and what you can give others to make it, to amplify it. So I do work with a lot of great artists with me, production, writing, video and sound, etc., which take my vision and amplify it. But since I do have an artistic background, sometimes I'm tempted to do a bit too much. So delegation is one thing that sometimes keeps me up at night.
I think that's a big challenge for many leaders. Thank you for sharing that with us. I appreciate it. Listen, like I said, we could go for a lot longer. You and I, last time, we had a 20-minute chat that went an hour and 10 minutes. And I was running late the rest of my day, but it was worth it. I love talking to you. This is very powerful, very, like I said, I love the simplicity of it and the beauty of it and the expensiveness of it. You know, it's so simple, it's so profound and so expensive. And I really do hope that everybody will take out that pen and paper and go to work on this. It's a very interesting and revealing exercise that I enjoyed doing, and I really appreciated you laying it out for me. Please tell our viewers, our listeners, where they can find out more about you, potentially hiring you in some way, shape, or form for what it is that you do and the extraordinary things that you bring up.
Oh, thank you, Dov. Thank you. Actually, I would love to hear from our listeners if they'd like to share with us their trailer scripts. I'd love to
fabulous.
Take a look at that and give some advice should they need some. You can easily find me on the web at nabildos.com, nabildos.com, and it's been a pleasure and honor, Dov, to share these moments with you and with our listeners.
Thank you, sir. It's been great having you on here. And again, I'm going to encourage you, dear listener, dear viewer, to please don't just listen to this. Actually take out a pen and paper, do the work, do the exercise. It will change you profoundly. I mean, and you know the thing I say to you all the time, go back and listen again. I promise you, promise you, there is so much that you missed because you were probably already playing in the background. If you go back and listen the second time, you'll discover some of the amazing gems that were really delivered here. Very exciting show. I had a great time. I hope you did too. And I want to remind you that you can find Nabil at nabildos.com. Of course, we will post that right with the player so you can see it and you'll be able to have access to it. But again, I want to remind you that the research consistently shows that the biggest challenges facing the most successful companies is often somewhat counterintuitive. That the fastest growing companies are often hit by the realization that they've spent a fortune attracting, training, and developing talent, only to have those employees leave them at an alarming rate. If you are sick and tired of training and developing your talent, only to have them leave you before you've had a return on your investment, then come talk to us at fullmontyleadership.com, where we provide the essential leadership skills to rekindle your soul, your purpose, and amplify the hidden loyalty assets inside of your organization. Working with us, you can reduce that turnover by as much as 20 to 80% in as little as 120 days, thus evaporating those costs. fullmontyleadership.com, providing you with the concrete soft skills to get you and your organization to the top and keep you there. Why? Because you can't outsource authenticity. This is Dov Baron, fullmontyleadership.com, saying stay curious, my friend. Stay curious about what your trailer might contain. Because when you get down to that essence, it's all going to open wide up for you. Until next time, this is Dov Baron, and I am out.